with Toronto Wolfpack to go head up to play the Super League was the last time would be the where's Sonny Bill going next conversation, because it was a good couple of years. I thought he'd sail off into the sunset and make his ridiculously large paychecks, and good on him. $10 million over 2 seasons. That is handy by anyone's language. And the fact of the matter is, Toronto will not be taking part in Super League if and when Super League gets back into action this year. They've had to pull the pin because of all the border issues. It's pretty hard to be a Canadian-based team taking part in a UK-based competition and everything around it. They've had to pull the pin, which is far from ideal and unfortunate for the growth of the game. But what it does mean is that there are now an array of players with Sonny Bill Williams at the top of that list who have nothing to do for the year. And it looks like he's going back to the NRL. A lot of teams put their hands up for it. His old club, the Bulldogs, being one of them. The Warriors, who can sign him without it going onto their salary cap under the loan player scenario. They've got space for the, if you like, the acceptance rule that they have to allow them to compete under these unusual circumstances. If they're paying him, they could end up paying $100K for him to play 5 games, which seems rather expensive. And you have to question whether Sonny Bill Williams can really change things for the Warriors this season. He hasn't played a lot of footy. He is 34 years old. That said, he is Sonny Bill Williams and does seem to make an impact virtually everywhere he goes. His work ethic, him joining the team alone, Catherine, to change the culture internally would be huge. It's been a really big part of everywhere he's gone. While he's performed well on the field largely, people say that his involvement with the youth and the example he sets with being a role model and also there to support them is money well spent. The Warriors could certainly use that boost, but I don't expect him to go there. He will almost certainly, if he comes back into the NRL, go to his old club, another of his old clubs, his most recent old club being the Roosters, who are high flyers. He will slot into a hole they have there. They've been quietly shifting players around this week, sending them to other clubs and freeing up space in the salary cap. So if he goes there, though, he has to quit his very rich deal with Toronto to do so. But Toronto have already said that they're prepared to nullify the deal for this year and sign a new one for next season. It's very complicated. It's a soap opera. So Sonny Bill is definitely back, Catherine.
He's got to keep himself on the field, though, this year, especially at his age, hasn't he? He's got to keep his hand in, or he's not going to be making any sort of a comeback next year. Interesting run with the Warriors. Can they afford him? I hear what you're saying, especially a side that's so up and down, that wins one week with a massive upset and then has a shocker the next week. You could see how just his presence in the team could help deal to some of that inconsistency, perhaps.
And also, it makes Sonny Bill Williams a Warrior, right? Part of his legacy is having played for the Warriors. It's something that the Warriors can certainly, I don't want to say that it's purely a commercial decision, but cash in on for years to come as that former Warrior, Sonny Bill Williams. And getting him in and involved would be of massive benefit to the club. He's a huge role model for so many for his incredible achievements. And the way he's turned his life around as well, off the field as well, as he's a pretty remarkable young man. But
can they afford him was the question.
Yes, they can, because they can pay him outside of the salary cap because of the loan situation they have for this season. They won't have him beyond this season. And so by the time he comes in, whoever he's coming in for, you aren't going to see bang for your buck for a while, because you've got to get the deal done. He's going to go through quarantine. He's going to come in, then go through conditioning. And by that stage, there's probably 5 games, maybe 6 games left in the regular season. And if you're not going to play finals football, then it seems like what it is. It's someone's labelled it a $100,000 cheerleader, and it's a bit more than that. But he's essentially there to raise spirits if that was to be the case.
Okay, let's just stay with the coaching situation just quickly, because speaking of long-running sagas, are we any clearer on the Warriors' job?
Clear as mud, unfortunately, Catherine. We are clearer in that there are contenders and candidates who are dropping out of the situation. Now, Trent Barrett was a name that was loosely linked. He's been signed up by the Bulldogs after they sacked their coach, and now the Cowboys have also sacked their coach, Paul Green, who is a very successful coach prior to this season kind of falling apart on him. He won North Queensland their first ever premiership and has been seen as one of the rising stars in the coaching ranks. So he's on the market, is now within 48 hours has been talked about as one of the main contenders for the Warriors. And the Warriors certainly don't have the same level of roster that the Cowboys do. So people are saying if we can't get the Cowboys together, how would he do anything for the Warriors? But sometimes a change is as good as a holiday. Even coaches need to kick up the bum sometimes to break out of complacency. He can coach. He's been talked about as a potential State of Origin coach in the future as well. He would be a good candidate to get far from signed off. He's indicated he wanted a little break before he got onto his next gig. So where the Warriors go, basically the Warriors are interested in everybody until they have somebody. They haven't even decided on the type of coach they want, which is understandable, because if you decide on the type you want and they're not there, then you end up with egg on your face. But it'll be wonderful to put a bow on that saga, as well as the Sonny Bill one, Catherine. I would take that very happily.
Okay, now, staying with the Sonny Bill, is there a new one emerging who's young and being scrapped over by both codes?
This is intriguing, ugly, and kind of feels wrong in a lot of ways, but it's professional sport. That's what it is. If you haven't heard of the name Joseph Suali, you will soon, because he's going to be hitting headlines no matter what. He's 16 years old. He's incredibly talented. He's been coming through the schoolboy ranks for a while. He's signed up by the South Sydney Rabbitohs, an NRL club, for some time now, kind of through the development system. He can't sign an NRL contract or a regular.
And hello and welcome for coming along. It's an event that I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to be in Parliament for this. And it is a very special thank you to the two providers of the government's Progressive Home Ownership Fund, the first two that we have joining us here today. This is something that has been eagerly awaited by all of us, and it's a significant moment for our government to put in place another important component of our housing program. Welcome to my parliamentary colleague, the Green Party's Marama Davidson, who you will hear from soon. The Progressive Home Ownership Fund is a key part of Labour's confidence and supply agreement with the Greens, and I know that Marama is excited as I am to see this program underway. So I'm delighted to announce more details about the fund, an investment that will help up to 4,000 New Zealand families to buy their own homes. Home ownership is something most New Zealanders used to take for granted. Unfortunately, underinvestment in housing and infrastructure in the past has let the dream of home ownership slip by for an increasing number of families. It has been just that, a dream, and a dream that cannot be fulfilled. The gap that's been created between house prices and what is affordable to many families, no matter how hard they work and save, is something this government has been firmly focused on addressing. And today we start. As house prices have increased, more and more families have been priced out of home ownership. People who might be able to afford mortgage payments simply aren't able to save the deposit required. Others who might be able to get together that small deposit are sometimes not able to manage the ongoing costs of a mortgage. Progressive home ownership schemes help these families by sharing the cost of a mortgage and addressing the deposit barrier. The first phase of the $400 million fund has signed up providers in Auckland and Queenstown to support the first 100 low to median income families into home ownership. And I'm pleased that we're joined here today by representatives of those first two providers, the Housing Foundation of Auckland and the Lakes Community Housing from Queenstown. Welcome to your place, Parliament. These providers are already working with families to help get them prepared to be homeowners, and we expect to see the first group of families into their new homes in October, November this year. You'll soon see a video of the Sayuli family in Auckland who are being helped into home ownership through this scheme, and we'll be announcing further providers soon. The fund will scale up funding for organisations already providing progressive home ownership schemes with wraparound support services such as budgeting services. These first phase housing providers already have existing progressive home ownership products proven to the banking sector. They are experienced and have the scale, size and access to deliver quickly. As part of this approach, there will be a dedicated iwi and Māori pathway with a specific focus on better housing outcomes for Māori. The fund also includes an initiative through Kāinga Ora for households with an annual income of under $130,000 to receive shared ownership support directly from the government. But we envision there will be families earning as low as $50,000 a year who will be able to take advantage of this scheme. The $130,000 is a cap. The fund's priorities will be to support people in locations with severe housing affordability, households unable to otherwise buy into the market, Maori Pacific people and families with children. The fund will have a strong preference for building new houses to increase supply. Providing this funding will also provide confidence to residential housing markets. Phase 1 is providing us with a good opportunity to learn what is required to deliver a fully effective fund so we can streamline the systems and processes needed and ensure we target the priority groups the fund intends to assist. These lessons help inform how we roll out the full fund. So once again, thank you for coming along today. I'll now hand over to Marama for a few words, then we'll watch a video and then I'll take some questions. Kia ora tautau.
As the Minister said, we really are excited, and I suspect that I may have shouted down the phone a few times already to a couple of journalists, and I'm probably going to have to tone down my jubilation, but we have every reason to be jubilant about this, and I absolutely want to start by thanking the Honourable Minister Megan Woods and your teams for working with us to bring this to this starting point today. Thank you everyone here. I'm really proud to be here on behalf of the Green Party as we announce the first providers selected for the Progressive Home Ownership Fund. We have always held a firm belief that quality housing is an absolute human right. It's the way we rejuvenate our communities and that we all deserve a secure place to call home. And this today takes us a step closer to achieving that and starts off a whole narrative of strong communities, connected whānau and secure homes for everyone. And there has been a lot of mahi done to get us to this point. And I do make special mention of our community housing providers who have worked so hard on the ground to help make this happen. Our community housing providers have been doing this work for decades and have an expertise that the government needs to help us scale up the successful approach that you have role modelled to progressive home ownership. Especially because COVID-19 has shone a light on the inequality, which we knew already existed. So as we recover, we must invest in programs which create more equitable communities. And this is a fantastic example of exactly the kind of support that we need more of. As the Minister said, too many people have been unable to own their own home, and this is the very step towards changing that and ensuring that everyone has a chance to that security and that home if they want it. Again, we know that many low-income families trying to save for a deposit can almost not even dream of actually owning their own home. That's especially the case in our main centres, and I'm really pleased to see this program kicking off in the two areas where I know it will make a real difference as well. This will make a huge difference to those families, and we look forward to seeing the scheme grow, to working out with this pilot announcement how we can make it better, how we can make sure that it works for families, and how home ownership can be a reality for more whānau. So as I finish up, progressive home ownership is a big deal for the Greens and working with government. It's a key part of our confidence and supply agreement with Labour, and we would like again to thank the government partners for their collaboration on this scheme. I am incredibly excited to be marking this massive win for families and towards a more equal society. Kia ora koutou.
Thank you, Marama, and I won't ask you to curb your enthusiasm. Look, it's my very real pleasure now to show a video of a special family, the Saoli family, who are mum and dad, 3 kids, both parents work as chefs, to see that. We're going to see a bit of their story in this video that we're going to watch. One thing that I do want to emphasise for everybody, and the dates will be significant, this family signed up for this property on the 23rd of March 2020, 2 days before we went into level 4 lockdown. So you can imagine their lockdown period, thinking about their future, and went unconditional on the 22nd of May. But I think one of the things that shows about the journey that we need to go on, this is a family that the New Zealand Housing Foundation in Auckland started working with at the end of last year. That this is a journey we need to go on with families. This is about making sure we're standing alongside New Zealanders to realise that dream of home ownership.
The best thing about owning our own home is having a place to call home, having somewhere where our children can always come back to when they grow up and they decide to have their own children.
If we were to go rent again, would just be starting all over again. We've moved out of so many properties because they've been sold and had to restart over and over again.
Hey, Graham, you guys here, eh?
Nice to see you again.
The Progressive Home Ownership Fund is a fund of money that's going to help hard-working Kiwis get into their first home. So get out of rental and into paying the mortgage. This scheme enables families to get the mortgage that is affordable for them, put in their deposit as well, but then the balance of that purchase price is paid by this fund. They pay back that fund over 10 or 15 years in the future.
But then you have a look at that doorway there.
Oh my gosh.
It's very difficult to buy a house. Any area in around where we were brought up, so we're from Manukau, and this area here, Flatbush, it's just way too expensive.
This is a huge opportunity for the Housing Foundation. We welcome the opportunity to partner with the government through the ministry, and it just really means for us that we can help more families into their first home.
But we couldn't have brought a house without this fund being available.
Since we've been together, we've rented 4 different houses, and and we've never actually settled and been stable in a house. It's always been packing up and moving, packing up and moving. I've been really worried because every time we move, we've had to change our daughter's school. She's never got that stability that she should get in her education.
So do you guys know where your bedroom's going to be?
I think your room is going to be up the top.
My room is right here.
Oh, that's the garage.
We've learned so much to do with revolving mortgages, credits, just from the workshops that have happened through these foundations. So it's given us the tools and the knowledge to help us get past our debt and actually get in a position where we can earn our own home.
It's not a handout. This is a hand up. What it's doing is enabling families, and through the fund, more families to get into their first home.
Owning a house for us is amazing. Owning a house in this area with the schools that are available to our children is just what we've dreamed about. And it's something for them, for their future, and definitely an investment for us as well in the future.
This one's gotta be up to the roof and have a roof.
Thank you. Happy to take a couple of questions.
You said that this is a key part of the Greens and the Labour's supply and confidence deal. Then why has it taken 2.5, well, the better part of 3 years actually to start the funding?
Look, the money was allocated and the policy work has been worked through. This is something that has never been done at this scale in New Zealand before. It is vitally important that we get it right, that we worked with the community housing provider sector that have been doing this and making sure that we understood exactly where it is that the government can add value and work with the existing providers on the ground. I'm pretty proud that in our first term in government, we're seeing the first families that are going to be achieving a dream of home ownership that was not available to them without our government putting in place this scheme.
But it only came into fruition a year ago when you announced it. I mean, that's still about 2 years where nothing really happened. And it only moved after Marama said in her party conference that she was applying pressure on the government to actually fulfil the supply and confidence.
Look, this is work that was underway. It's certainly work that was underway that I made a priority when I took over the housing portfolio, and this was a key priority for me. It was in our confidence supply agreement. I'd like to point out to you that parliamentary terms are 3 years, and that we work through those obligations over a period of 3 years. So I am proud that this is one that we can put a tick beside that we have achieved as in a government, and it's an important one because this is about New Zealanders who were otherwise shut out of home ownership.
Why is it taking so long to just get to the point of only being able to announce 2 providers today? Why is it such a long process?
Look, we've been doing some intensive work with the community housing provider sector, working alongside them, understanding what works, what doesn't, what is the split we need in terms of the direct provision and the wraparound service. And we've been working with a number of providers, and we will be bringing more on as we go through. This has been a hugely collaborative process that we've done with the sector, and one which the government certainly has a richer policy that we're releasing today because of the involvement of the community housing providers, and that certainly is the approach that we'll continue to take. Look, I'm going to push back on this notion of taking so long. In our first term in government, we are setting up a progressive home ownership scheme that this country has never seen before. This is something we'd said we would do in our first term of government, and we have done it. I think, like you were just saying, we've got 2 weeks left of Parliament. Our intention was to make an announcement about this earlier, but like many things, April announcement dates got pushed back a little bit for obvious reasons.
How much of the 400 million is going towards these 2 organisations?
So there is 16.99 million going to the Auckland New Zealand Housing Foundation. That's for 78 homes across Auckland. And then there's 6.365 million for Queenstown, and that's for 25 1 to 2 bedroom units. So that was some policy work that Cabinet made around where it was that we were going to be putting the support, that we needed to do some quite detailed policy work about who were the cohorts we were looking to help. There are already existing progressive home ownership products, some of which are available through banks, which hasten home ownership for some people that bring forward that prospect of home ownership. But then there's also work that you can do about families who wouldn't otherwise have a chance at home ownership. So we needed to look at the balance of the portfolio of that. Cabinet made a decision to work into the area of we envision there will be people on on household incomes of around $50,000 who will be able to be helped through this. We've worked up the criteria with the community housing providers. There needs to be a balance between the assistance people need, but then also the ability to service those mortgages. That's the upper limit. Bear in mind that the Kiwi Build thresholds are 120 to 180,000, so it actually is at the lower end of that in terms of. But when you're putting together a progressive home ownership scheme, you do need to have a continuum of people coming through in terms of balancing the risk of the portfolio. But Cabinet made a very concerted decision that we wanted to be pushing into that area of incomes as low as 50,000 because there's nobody else that is helping them.
Other government assistance products like the home, first home grant and first home loan aren't they available to these families as well?
Yes. So we'll see that you'll be able to leverage up a number of opportunities to help with that.
Minister, for Kiwis that could cover a mortgage but they just can't save that deposit, what are the actions that they now can take and what's the specific help they can get for that deposit? There is already specific help around deposit assistance and through some of the products we have through first home grants and people pulling together that deposit. But one of the things that we've talked about, the way this will operate, some of it is through the community housing providers, which is the intensive wraparound support around budgeting. But then there is a provision through Kāinga Ora as well, which will be a lighter touch, which will be about helping people get together the deposit. So there's a priority on getting more Maori deposit?
this is progressive home ownership. It is paid back. It's on a 15-year recycle rate. And so in that sense, yes, it is a loan if they qualify.
Probably don't getting more Maori Pacific into these houses. Does that mean there's a commitment from the providers to ensure a certain number of those houses go directly to Maori Pacific?
Yeah, so we're seeing of this initial 45 million, that there's 15 million of that, a third, that is going into that provision. And certainly this is work that I've been working very closely with Minister Mahuta on as well in terms of Māori housing.
So a third specifically has been set aside?
Yes.
Could you go through the figures? You said 45 million then, but the numbers that you outlined before add up to 23 million. Where's the rest?
Oh, so there'll be more that will be brought on. This is the first flush of it. This is the first 100 that will be going through, but there'll be more people brought on as we go through.
In terms of the products, will they differ depending on the provider? So will the Queenstown one be a leasehold setup and the Auckland one shared equity?
Oh, look, we're allowing for a variety of ways of doing progressive home ownership, and why we're calling it progressive home ownership and not shared equity, not rent to buy and not leasehold, because under this banner there's a variety of ways in which we can help and providers can help people into home ownership. So we're open to looking at a number of ways in which we can make home ownership accessible for people. So there will be a variety of approaches.
But already these organisations have certain approaches that they're already using certain products. So is this funding being used to scale up the existing offerings that they have?
So we're working with the providers around building on the success. They haven't been able to do it at this scale. There hasn't been a $400 million fund sitting out there to help with the provision of this. But we're building on the strengths that have been built up and the significant intellectual property that has been built up within our community housing providers about how to do this. So we'll continue to build on that.
Are there any standards of the homes that need to be met for them to be part of this scheme? Are they all new homes or some older?
The priority is on new builds. That is because we know we need to add to housing supply in New Zealand, that we still do have a shortage of homes. I think one of the other things that will skew it towards new builds is the fact that some of the deposit assistance products are specifically targeted. There's more available if you're doing a new build. But that said, we will be taking a place-based approach to this. So there could be, I'm not ruling out, there could in the future be some places in New Zealand where the most logical way to do this will be through existing homes, but certainly the priority has been given to new builds. So I'll just take a couple more questions.
And the standards, do they match up with Kiwi Build standards, or is there anything?
Well, I guess at its most basic level, the building code will be the standard that we'll aim to adhere to. But certainly this is about the government assisting people into warm, dry, safe, secure homes. And that is the standard that we want to assist people into. Sorry, I'll just take one over here.
What sort of safeguards can homeowners expect with regards to the providers and when they eventually do sell on their portion of the property, that they're not going to charge exorbitant fees and so on and so forth?
Oh, look, these are a group of organisations that are committed. Their whole reason for being is to helping New Zealanders into home ownership. They're not-for-profit organisations in the sense that they're there to perform a particular function. Certainly the arrangements we have with them have set out an expectation is that if there is any capital gain that is accrued by the provider, that gets recycled back into further progressive home ownership funding.
Or anything like that sort of gives the homeowners who will go into these schemes some sort of peace of mind that they won't be landed with
there is. Yeah, no, look, there are of course detailed agreements that each of these homeowners will enter into to ensure that they are protected and setting out clearly our expectation that any capital gains and profits will be recycled back into progressive home ownership. One more question. Sorry.
Just to be clear on the actual products that are being offered, is this funding going into helping the two organisations scale up to provide more of their existing products, while they doing new offerings using this money?
Well, I think you can see from the example of the video that we saw that this is a family that was brought into the scheme after we made the announcement last year. This allows for a scale to be done. Is it an entirely new enterprise for them? No. This is something that has been happening, but not at the scale that this scheme will allow. To be able to do 78 families across Auckland in that period of time is a significant increase. We have not seen this scale of activity previously.
No, I just want to be clear though, so the Queenstown organisation, they have a product called Secure Home, which is a leasehold offering. So is this money going into scaling that offering up, or are they also going to start doing different types of offerings like shared equity, not the leasehold one?
So the 25 homes that Queenstown are offering in the first instance, and they're here, so you'll be able to have a conversation with them as well, is that they are using their leasehold model that they've been using in Queenstown, that first 25 are under that model, but that's not to rule out there could be different models that could be used in the future.
Minister, you noted that at least by 2021, these people could apply direct to government for this kind of progressive scheme. So what needs to happen if you're transitioning away from using providers as the middleman?
No, it's not a transition away. It's bringing on the next phase of the scheme, that we will, all the way through this 15-year period, be working with community housing providers. They're different types of product where we need to work quite intensively with families and put wraparound services with them, budgeting advice. Often there's some debt to be cleared that needs to be worked through before you can even contemplate having the conversation with the bank around that. There is a set of skills that sits within our community housing providers that they are best placed to do. Where we just do a bit more assistance, that will be delivered directly through government, but they're very different products, so it's not a phasing in or out. Thank you very much.
Understood to have been in the country ever since. The executive director